Okay, so what does our INFJ teenager look like a bit more in detail? We've said that he or she is most likely compliant. There's a possibility that he or she is a solipsist by then, but due to the natural pressures of group forming and group dynamics around those particularly crucial years, usually psychic nature will have it so that the pressure to conform trumps the pressure to become more solipsistic. And that explains why there are ultimately more compliance than solipsists in the INFJ population, because once you orient yourself towards that during your adolescence, because that's the crucial juncture at which it happens, it becomes something that you carry with you later in life. Of course, doesn't mean that later, you can spiritualize. There's even a point to be made that spiritualization is easier. This is a point I've made in previous videos. Spiritualization is likely easier for compliance than it is for solipsists. Because the issue with solipsists is that they cut themselves off from the social group. And as much of a conformity machine the social group can be, it is much better to be part of a social group than not to be part of a social group. And here at this particular juncture, I could mention that the spinning INFJ, this new subtype of INFJ, just like the solipsist, tends to suffer from social isolation of a different kind. The solipsist chooses deliberately an option that they could have decided not to go for, whereas the spinning INFJ is kind of born in a contemporary era where technological progress and being surrounded by images and screens and all the rest of it facilitates isolation. People don't spend embodied time together as much as they used to, and that is a real issue for mental health, for INFJ individuation, for psychic balance, for your anxiety levels, and everything else. In any case, our INFJ teenager, I think what we can say is that on the whole, given that there's a predominance of compliance, the INFJ in school, all the way from the beginning of secondary school to the end of secondary school, really, until what we call the Leaving Cert or the A levels or the back in Europe, the exam that you take at the end of secondary school and prior to possibly going into university, usually this INFJ, the dominant INFJ, won't stand out that much. Will come across as a reserved, polite, likable pupil with decent grades, but will essentially be defined by a fear to be too adventurous with their NI, to be too adventurous with how they manifest their singularity in their schoolwork and in their creative work, if there is any such. In other words, I would actually tend to surmise that it might be harder for INFJs to find their true type during those years, even though technically they could. They already are INFJs for those who are. But they are really likely to go through a phase of suppressing what makes them different in the name of more conformity and in the name then of a certain kind of conformity towards schooling. So they're going to, the average INFJ pupil is going to be doing well in school, but maybe not stand out as particularly original or particularly brilliant. In many cases, not because they're unoriginal or not because they're not brilliant, but because they're not daring to explore that singularity, because it is, they're afraid of exclusion. They're afraid of being re-traumatized by the experience of being misunderstood that we've talked about before. And it's only later, I think, if the INFJ pursues like tertiary education that you will start noticing more singularity and more originality, and we're going to be discussing this, of course. Let me know in the comments what you think, guys. Don't forget that you can support me on Patreon. I need your support more than ever. I mentioned it before, we've lost a few key donors recently, and I hope that some of you will consider joining our Patreon for a small amount every year, or every month, of course. You can get cool perks like access to our Discord server, the Fourfold. I'm there every day, as well as bonus video content every 2 or 3 weeks on the topic of your choice, a deep dive that I record just for the Patreon community. And of course, don't forget my 2 books on the INFJ. The links are below: the Ecstatic Soul and the Infinite Soul. Ecstatic Soul more on the mind of the INFJ, still the deepest book on the topic to this date. You should get it if you haven't yet. And the Infinite Soul on INFJs in the modern world, finding happiness, purpose, and value. This is my latest book. It's the first link below, and you should definitely get that too. Okay, see you soon, guys. Bye-bye.